feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter.
This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast. We are brought to you by Prize Picks, coming at you Monday morning. It's April 14th. And coming up in today's show, we'll talk matchups, how they're going to guard Luka, who's guarding Ant. We'll talk some other question marks in this series. Can Conley survive defensively against this Lakers team with no real small guards? We'll talk Randle versus LeBron. And then also just bigger picture, I want to talk about some of the differences between this Wolves playoff team and last season's Wolves playoff team, because I do think they are pretty different and not all in bad ways. That and more coming up. Today's show is brought to you by Falling Knife Brewing Company in Northeast Minneapolis, and that's the spot to watch Wolves games this postseason as it was last year. If you're watching on YouTube, I wanted to show you what it looks like at Falling Knife for a game night. They have this big old TV truck out there that has screens on both sides. There's sound out there, and it's a setup around the brewery out there. You could bring a lawn chair, watch, like compared to 4th of July fireworks, right? Where you're setting up your own spot, get there early and watch the game. Really looked like an incredible environment at Falling Knife last season. We want to let you know that TV truck's back, and Falling Knife is going to again be the spot to watch Wolves games at this postseason. That's Falling Knife Brewing Company in Northeast Minneapolis.
Hey, yeah.
All right, we are now joined by Wolves beat writer Jace Frederic. Jace, I think both of our predictions going into yesterday were that that Warriors-Clippers game, that maybe the Warriors were going to win, that they were going to be at home. Clippers
They
were
were slight favorites, yeah.
And which would have shifted things. The Wolves would have been, had the Warriors won, the Wolves would have been the 5 seed in Denver, playing against Denver in the 4-5 matchup. But because the Clippers win, the Wolves, due to tiebreakers, whatever, the standings get moved down to 6, and the Lakers are the 3 seed there. Just big picture at first, how do you feel like the Wolves matching up against the Lakers would have compared to matching up against the Nuggets? Because also, if the Wolves would have beat the Bucks on Tuesday, they would have been playing the Nuggets, but they would have been had home court. Would have been Wolves Nuggets in the 4-5. So it was looking like Nuggets. Now it's Lakers. What's the difference in those, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I just think we have just less data on the Lakers. They've only played them once since
as
was
this
traded.
podcast will be an example of.
Yeah, right. And Minnesota, didn't have some key guys in that one. So like it's tough to say like, oh, here's how they match up with the Lakers. And it is kind of a guesstimate. And we'll give our best thoughts on that, take some educated hacks at it. But the Nuggets, it's just like there's so many obvious advantages, I think, for Minnesota, and like a supreme confidence that, hey, we know we can beat this team because we not only did it in the regular season 4 times, but just did it in the playoffs a year ago. And they just kind of know the formula. And I just always felt with Denver, it's like if they play their best basketball, if Minnesota brings the right intention for the game in terms of like, especially how they're going to defend, and then Ant, how he's going to attack offensively, I just didn't really see Denver's path to winning. So it really was entirely in my mind, like if Minnesota plays the way it can play, it will win the game. It will win the series over the course, even with Jokic on the court. The Lakers, I don't know if I feel that way, right? Because what's our biggest data point that everybody's going to point to now between this series, without having the previous Lakers matchups? They're going to point to Luka Doncic in Dallas in the West Finals, and fair enough, he's been great, and they don't have like an obvious solution they don't have a clear answer of here's how we always stop him, because they don't. So yeah, it's Luka, it's LeBron, it's 2 super cerebral players playing against a team that sometimes loses its mind. I think there's a lot of different factors at play where, they have LeBron, Luka, and Austin Reeves as guys who have good enough handles and creation to where you go, okay, they might not be as bothered by on-ball pressure. So there's a lot of different things. Minnesota has the clear advantage down low with Rudy. The Lakers don't have like a clear number 1 defender to guard Ant. So like there are some things both ways, but I do just think the things that make Minnesota a true threat to like contend for a West title, I think the Lakers have pieces that negate those. So the Wolves will have to find kind of different routes to win.
Yeah, and Denver specifically didn't. It's the things we talk about all the time: lack of rim protection and a clear and obvious guy to be guarding and slowing down Ant. We've learned that in the Denver series. You could make some of those cases with the Lakers, and I think we will. And we'll talk about that here as well. It was just, you're trading the known, or what we perceive to be the known, with the Nuggets versus a very much an unknown. But I don't even know. I mean, Murray, Who knows? Who knows what that would have
Yeah,
been?
no, it's no
I
guarantee.
think
Yeah.
Jokic would have got average 45 a game in that series, and you would have seen if you could have survived the rest. But the series is the Lakers. Wolves, and this is irrelevant, but the Wolves went 2-2 against the Lakers during the regular season opening night. They lose in LA. They play 2 games against the Lakers at Target Center in December. Destroy them both times. Those weren't very close games. It was kind of the nadir of the Lakers season. Again, irrelevant because Luka Doncic wasn't on the team then. They did play the Luka Lakers once on February 27th. They lost. The Wolves lost that game 102-111. But even that game is not serving me that many data points because Jalen Clark started in that game for the Wolves. No Julius Randle in that matchup. No Rudy Gobert. The Wolves started Nasri, Jaden McDaniels, Anthony Edwards, Jalen Clark, and Mike Conley. So I'm not sure it's all that relevant.
Yeah.
It was also Luka was kind of new to Luka's 6th game.
Yeah, right. They hadn't really found a
in
stride
LA.
yet. Ant got ejected in the middle of the third quarter. Like it was just that it was. Yeah, it's tough to say like, oh, there you go. That's it. I mean, especially when I think for me and you in this matchup, both like it's a key to the series is going to be Rudy. So when he's not even on the court,
Right.
it's really tough to evaluate anything.
The matchups in that game, I think, are a little bit telling.
Sure.
From at least from a guarding Ant standpoint, because the Lakers did have what has become their new starting 5 in that game. Jackson Hayes at the 5, Rui Hachimura at the 4, LeBron, Austin Reeves, and Luka Doncic. They had Hachimura on Ant to start that game because I don't think you want to put LeBron, Reeves, or Doncic on him. Hachimura on Ant is a pretty advantageous situation for the Wolves there. Also, if you were to factor in, Rudy should be able to have a pretty big advantage on Jackson Hayes at the 5 as well. How are you thinking about it from the Lakers side of guarding Ant?
Yeah, so watching back some of the stuff that they did with Ant in that game, that's another spot where, frankly, I think Rudy not playing probably made a big difference because there wasn't like a ton of high floor pick and roll. And when they did do it with like Luka Garza or whatever, it was when Hayes was on the court because Hayes is just naturally more of a drop defender. And Ant, would get a lot of good looks. And that's when a lot of Ant's points came in the half court set, just watching back his attempts from that game. And then other points when there was no Hayes out there, the Wolves didn't run as much high screen and roll. I think they were like, this probably just lead to a switch. And at that point, it was a lot of man defense. They didn't send any doubles, but they just did what I always think is probably the best thing to do against Ant, which is just heavy gap help, like super heavy. They were very much in on the elbows. And Ant settled for a lot of long jumpers, contested long jumpers, and he made some and he missed some. And I think that would be kind of the result here again, too. So I frankly, I'm not sure. I think the Lakers might see how much they can get away with non-Jackson Hayes minutes. Not to say they won't start with Hayes, but I just think if the Wolves, Ant is a drop coverage killer. Just if he is on a night where he's feeling good about his jumper, which is a lot of nights, and he can just step into those open threes, it can be a long night for you defensively. And I think with Hayes,
especially if the main guy can't, if whoever's guarding Ant can't stay attached,
he's not bothered from behind, can't stay attached. Exactly. There's the pursuit and just fighting through the screen. Just they don't have anybody like that. Vando would try, but it's not. I agree with you. So they don't have the personnel to do drop pick and roll coverage against Ant. Maybe they would have Hayes go up in a Jokic style. Hey, you've got to be out more. We've got to be kind of blitzing, high walling more. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if for sure closing games in for large segments of the game, they try to go with what I think their best 5 is, which is Rui, Finney-Smith, Reeves, Doncic, LeBron. And then you can play hey, whoever's on Ant, we switch everything. Whoever's on Ant's on Ant, and then we just have heavy gap help. And then that for me is where it's okay, now Rudy has to, not only hold his own and cover shooters or whatever. And I think he's done, a perfectly fine job of that. Minnesota would figure that out, even mixing matchups and pre-switching and all that kind of stuff. But punishing the Lakers on the glass for that. I think that would be the Lakers' first step is how much can we go small and seeing how much they can survive Rudy's impact down low.
Yeah, no, that was the first thing as I started looking at it of okay, sure, you've been starting Jackson Hayes. I don't imagine you're going to be playing Jackson Hayes starter minutes in this series, even if he starts, does start the game, because it does make sense to bring in a Vanderbilt or regardless of what your coverage is, a Vanderbilt or a Finney Smith, just I think as being a better option for guarding Ant than anything they have in the starting five there. So I think this could quickly be a series where we go, well, we thought the Lakers played this way, or they played this group of guys, and all of a sudden it's different. And I think I take your point on the switching element of it. I think if I'm the Lakers, you just try to get into comfortable switching action with heavy gap help. And then if he's still taking advantage of that, which was the Suns model last year, which he did take advantage of it,
Right.
then it's 2 on the ball, particularly end of quarters, end of halves, end of games, and you try to get it out of his hands. I would be very shocked if JJ Redick did the thing, which was we're going to play the lineups that allow Ant to do his best things, right? And that would be playing drop coverage and having a poor point of attack defender on Ant. That's going to be walk it. Like we have a talk about, does Ant have spots? Ant's spot is a walk-in three against high pick and roll, or in high pick and roll. So I think Vanderbilt is probably their best option for him. And I think that has an interesting ripple effect of when you do take Hayes out of the game, right? And now they don't have that lob threat for Luka,
right?
Which was really the issue in the Dallas series, if we're going off of that last season. And that's just stood out to me watching the Lakers since the Luka trade in general. Like how many times there's been some Lakers player in the dunker spot. Luka does his thing. He gets into the middle. And if it was Gafford or Lively, it's put it at the rim. It's a dunk 99% of the time. That it is not 99% of the time when he does that drop off to Finney Smith or Vanderbilt. Did they catch it? They got to land. They got to go back up with it. I mean, I don't watch all the Lakers game. I've seen that plenty over the course of time. I think it's an interesting opportunity cost for the Lakers to have to consider. There is, all right, do we need to play Vanderbilt or Finney Smith so as to not play Jackson Hayes defensively for the reasons that you just laid out? But then Jackson Hayes can catch lobs and finish that shot from the dunker spot. I don't know. I'm curious to see that from on the offensive side of the floor with the Lakers as well. That theoretically should be an advantage to the Wolves, or not something they needed to freak out about. Like they absolutely had to freak out about Gafford and Lively last year, who were freaky. That's what killed them.
Yeah, and even with depending on who is playing, like say it's Vando's coming up to set a high screen. I guess I haven't seen how often that happens, but last year also it was the lob, and then it was like Derek Lively in the short roll was incredible. I mean, just like either scoring or making the right kick every time. So like Minnesota's defense, if they would blitz Luka up top, now it would be down to Lively on the short roll, and he just made the right choice every time, and it just ended in great shots for Dallas. Like, okay, we got the ball out of Luka's hands, and it goes into this guy's hands. Like, great. And maybe with the Lakers, you end up in somebody else, depending on who's setting that screen. And I wouldn't be surprised either if we saw the Lakers do things just like seeing how much effort JJ Redick's put into regular season scouting and approach and game plan. Like if we saw some things where we're like, oh, I don't really see much of this Luka LeBron pick and roll or whatever, and here it comes. How do you defend this? But I agree with you that the whole idea of the Wolves even playing a version of a drop, even with Rudy out there, when they tried to do that against Luka, and it was just like, okay, he gets so deep, and now they're just like, there's nothing to do with that lob guy, and now that's there, and it's just a lower percentage. It's just a lower percentage play. Not to say it's still not a good play to drop off to the open guy, and maybe it's like a little shovel pass or something. He probably finishes a lot, but you have so many more chances to defend it than you did that lob that just felt inevitable in the West Finals. So, look, I mean, it's no secret. I think that's a big reason why the Lakers made an initial push to get like a Mark Williams. Like there was the reporting out there of Luka's like, hey, kind of need a lob threat. And I think they'll get one eventually, but they don't have one right now. And Hayes is fine. I have seen quite a few lobs to Hayes, but like you said, there's defensive cost there. And I don't know. We'll see what, the Lakers will probably start with Hayes in the first few minutes because he's the starter, and you usually don't just change the starting lineup for game one. But they might just be like right away, all right, yeah, we can't defend this way. Or maybe they'll be like, hey, when Hayes is out there, we have to high wall Ant. You've got to put in that effort, Hayes, and then they'll see how that goes. But I think
I just haven't watched enough of them to know if they ever do that.
But would you be surprised if you never do it, but then you still try to do it in a playoff series with a week to prepare?
Yeah, I just think I would do somebody other than Hayes at that.
You're going to start the game with Hayes, right? I mean, do you think that game one probably going to start the game with Hayes?
I don't know, man. I mean, yes, because to what you just said. That's typically what teams do, is go with their 5. But I think it wouldn't surprise me to see JJ preempt that,
Sure.
and but I don't know. I mean, we don't know. That's where the chess match starts
Right.
in this thing, is what they're going to be able to do against Ant and what lineups they have to play against it accordingly. I don't think for the Wolves on the other side with Luka, it's as much of a it doesn't start there as much, because you're not going to be like, okay, well, we're not going to play Jaden anymore because we don't. It doesn't look like he's guarded Luka. Like, I mean, is that you mentioned the getting deep part from Luka, and I think that is what led to the drop offs, the dunks for Gafford and Lively. But part of what the issue is there is that Luka had very little resistance to getting deep ever in that series. And I was going back watching some of the Dallas stuff last night. I haven't gone through all the games, but I was surprised of how much Kyle Anderson it was on Luka in that series. Obviously, Jaden started on him, but they went to that a lot. And I think part of that was like, all right, Kyle's a little bit bigger and strong, a little bit more resistance to that depth. I mean, that's where this starts, right? Is with Jaden being able to guard Luka in a way that is keeping him, not letting him get to like 6-7 feet like he so often does. How do you feel about the Jaden element of this being where it starts for the Wolves defense, like the puzzle starting there?
What's interesting is in the past, I remember like early in his career, Jaden was like a real issue for Luka. Like, and Luka would even say like, this Jaden McDaniels, like, Jesus, but I almost feel like Luka keeps getting bigger and everybody just contributes that to being fatter. But he also does seem to be getting stronger, I think, as well, along with that. And that looked like it showed in the West finals. Like, he just got wherever he wanted to go on the court.
Mm-hmm.
And even if it was more methodical, he still got there. And once he gets you on his hip, it's over. But I feel like he's also comfortable even just taking whatever method it takes to get to that spot. And if it's with using his size against like a Jaden to get to his spot, like, he'll do it. So he might be able to do that again. Frankly, I would, if I saw that, I think maybe you would have to think about like, okay, what is he doing right now? Do we at least want to make him change what he's doing? Does that mean going like with like a Julius Randle if he's on the court, and who mostly likes to defend just with physicality and being like, just try to go through me? I don't know. I do think they have some different looks they can throw at him. They tried a few different things in the West Finals and nothing worked. But, they also didn't have somebody who plays as physically, just like with his body, as like a Randall does. So I think they've got a plethora of options. But Jaden will be number one. And we'll see if Jaden, with a week to think about it, with a week to prepare for it, a week for them to be like, hey, this guy's Luka. Let's run it like this. I think that all matters, of Jaden maybe being like, okay, here's how I'm going to attack this.
Yeah. And to be clear, we're doing contingency plans here. My assumption is that is going to be Jaden's job until it isn't, or two fouls. What we're bringing up is this idea of having a sturdier guy guard him, which Ant is that too.
Yeah, I know, but do you remember the West Finals? Like,
yes, I was just going to say.
Yeah, like it was like Ant's okay, yeah, and they'd make that switch to be like, that makes sense. Ant's the sturdy guy, and then Luka just discarded him. And it was like, oh, I've never seen somebody do this to Ant when Ant's trying to play defense.
Well,
it was.
That's what he's so good at. That's what he's so good at, is like, okay, it is this guy, and this is the way I'm going to have to play, right? Like, against this player, if it's if it is Jaden on him, it's that screen every time. Let's try to get downhill. If it's not, you don't even bring that screen, and it's a guy that he knows that he can isolate against, or he can get his step back in, or he can get to a screen into a step back. He's very good at like picking that apart. I'm with you to the Julius point of it was like, if it was just one-on-one and you knew for like that possession, all right, not as the main one, but occasionally. But I just feel like in that situation, you put Julius Randle in a ball screen action with Rudy, and now it's Randle and Gobert guarding Luka in pick and roll. You don't love that. So I was thinking about the Randle one.
Yep.
If Randle's on the ball, then you got to blitz. Then you got to, you're up in high wall and you're trying to get the ball out of Luka's hands. So you're making it where the possessions that Randle is guarding Luka, it is in isolation, right? If they're not bringing the screen, because Luka did that a lot in the Dallas series, right? Where he was just like, nope, don't even bring a screen
Yeah,
because now they can bring a second guy up into it. He would just, I was watching some of the like game 5 and he was like, nope, let me just go at Jaden. Let me just go at Jaden. No screen. And that worked. That was how they put away game 5. So it's, you gotta have all these different answers and options. And maybe some people are like, what are you talking about, Dane and Jace? Julius Randle? Like, the point is you got to have a depth of things, as they had to have last year with Kyle Anderson and Ant and Jaden all taking reps on him. I don't know if they go 9 in the playoffs, but we did see Jalen Clark guard Luka some. That was his primary matchup in the one matchup the time the Wolves played him as well. Jalen does have some of that. I would say he's a sturdiness guy as well there. So that's cool. I mean, they got a lot of different options. Historically, Luka has answers to all of those different archetypes of defenders. And so it's probably just going to be about finding ones that work best and being willing to diversify whenever, oh, Luka's got this, we're going to something else here. But yeah, Ant, Jaden, Julius, Jalen Clark. I don't know, maybe Nikhil's too small for that one.
I feel
Seemed like
he
it
is,
was
but yeah.
in Dallas. But still, that's 5 options, 4 of which we would say those are really good isolation defenders, you know. And it'll be interesting. I'm curious just to see how committed Finch is to Jaden figuring it out, you know, and not being like, and not waving the white flag. Because I don't know if he waved the white flag on it against Dallas, because there was rationale to be like, okay, well, we'll put Jaden on Kyrie, you know.
Yeah.
And I think Jaden was probably the best guy to be guarding Kyrie then. This one is more so, not to take away from LeBron, but LeBron is different than Kyrie. This one feels so about figuring out your best matchups and coverages against Luka Doncic. And that's a difference to me versus the Dallas series a year ago.
And if you think Jaden is your best option for Luka, that's where you have to go. But there is another side benefit of, if somebody else is your better option for Luka, then Jaden is a really good option for Austin Reeves.
Sure.
So that matters as
Good
well. And you mentioned that multiple options, diversifying. I mean, that is something where players, coaches all the time say it. These guys are too good to keep throwing the same thing at them again and again and again, because they find the answers. If you can constantly keep mixing it up, and every possession down, or not every possession, but every few possessions make them have to think it, and their teammates be like, oh, wait, okay, now they're going with this guy, and that means we're supposed to do this. You know, like, just so like that makes it a little more difficult for everybody to get into a rhythm. But I think the Luka question is probably the biggest one of the whole series. Like, I can talk about the Wolves' advantages, you know, but I really do think it's how much does the game feel like it is being controlled by Luka Doncic on a night-to-night basis, and it has to be different. It has to be different than the West Finals, because frankly, like, you could tell at various points in that series, the Wolves almost looked like they felt defeated, because it's like, what are we supposed to do with this guy, you know? And that can't happen. And maybe that's with defensive coverages. Maybe it is with poking a little bit more at Luka's defense and finding ways offensively to feel like you're getting back at him, to where you're excited to see him out there because he's on the other end of the court, even just for like a mental kind of thing. So a lot of chess pieces to move.
Today's show is brought to you by Adriana Lonick at Coldwell Banker Realty. And if you are in the market for buying a home in Minnesota or Wisconsin this spring, this summer, we would love it if you signed up for a free strategy session with Adriana to figure out what is required for buying or selling the home that you are looking at. The perk we have is if you do sign up for a free strategy session with Adriana, you're entered to win some free Wolves tickets from us. Again, the process starts for buying a home by having one of these strategy sessions and getting a real idea of what you can and cannot afford to do, and where you want to do it. That is where a realtor comes in. To learn more about what Adriana has to provide for you, you can go to the Dancing Realtor, thedancingrealtor.com for more information, or you can call or text her at 715-304-9920, again, to book one of those strategy sessions. Like I said, you book that strategy session and you'll be entered to win some Wolves tickets. Today's show is also brought to you by Prize Picks. It's early on Monday, so we don't have like the full spread of Wolves Lakers stuff up there, but I was just looking at it. If you want to they got the demons option up there. So if you want to make a real aggressive play, you want to say Ant makes more than 5.5 threes in game one, and Luka makes more than 4.5. Okay, you put those together, put $20 on that, you win 180. There'll be a lot more coming on here, but take a look. We'll be talking about it throughout the week. Jace, Wolves or otherwise, did you have any prize picks that you liked?
No, not really. I was looking at the threes too, and I also looked at Ant for that because I was like, well, at least he's going to shoot enough of them.
5.5's a lot.
It is a lot. It is a lot.
It's juiced. That's juiced. It's a
Yeah.
demon. So that one's more. But.
Yeah, that was my biggest one where I was like, I would just roll with that in a playoff game in game one when Ant's going to be juiced, and that's a big number. But like, I wouldn't be surprised if. Yeah, like with the high pick and roll with Jackson Hayes, maybe that would be the most of what we would see all series, frankly.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So it might be your best chance to hit a number like that. So that was my one, of course.
Yeah. I'm sure this will already be different by the time people are listening to this and looking at it. Obviously, Prize Picks is putting up different options for every game. I think they're a little bit more focused on the playing games now.
Yeah, we are 5 days out.
Yeah, that's fair. You know? I was pumped that it was even anything was up there. I'm like, ooh, something to talk about. But there'll be plenty on there. I also think, you're going to be watching the Royal Hugh. You're going to be watching more NBA basketball every night for the next couple months, right? There's gonna be games on. It's a fun way if you need a way to make, what is it, Orlando and Atlanta or something fun on Tuesday, put $5 on something. It's a fun way to make the games a little bit more. Again, you just got to play for $5, whatever. Don't need to break the bank. It's daily fantasy. PrizePicks.com, PrizePicks app. If you don't have an account, you can sign up with the promo code Dane, and they will put $50 in your account when you make your first $5 lineup. All right, Jace, let's keep moving on a couple. I mean, I think we started where it starts, which is the questions of who guards Ant, who guards Luka, who's on the floor for all of those things. A ripple off of this, and if you were looking for a place, and I know people already are from the scanning I've done, to make a starting lineup change or doing something different if you're the Wolves, preempting maybe an issue. There's a lot of Dante DiVincenzo should start over Mike Conley in this series. I think it's fair to say that there's not a clear matchup for Mike in the starting lineup. He probably has to be guarding Austin Reeves, would be my assumption for how this would start. I hear some of that. Dante is going to play plenty too. I just, I sent this to you in the email, but I do want to note that, yes, Mike Conley got cooked against Luka Doncic and the Dallas Mavericks in the Western Conference Finals a season ago. Was an issue. He was also very hurt in that series. And I'm curious granted, a year older Mike Conley, but a healthy version of Mike Conley, what he's able to do from a holding up physically standpoint in this matchup. What do you make of the Conley and how he fits into this and the maybe lack of matchup that he has?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fair concern. I think if you talk about, hey, okay, he's probably got to guard Austin Reeves. It's like the Mike Conley dream matchup is a point guard who is more of a facilitator defending that guy or a movement shooter, where Mike's just so smart and can run around for days and exhaust himself, doing a really good job of doing that. Austin Reeves is not that. Austin Reeves is somebody who, if he got the ball in the perimeter and saw Mike Conley, he'd be like, I'm going to go to work here. And Austin Reeves is really good and would probably have a lot of success. So I understand those concerns, frankly. I think Mike will start, and otherwise I think it would be an okay series to really just try to kind of pair him with like the Gabe Vincent minutes. And maybe that ends up being 15, 20 minutes, whatever. I think that's fair. I do think the Wolves might look at it as like, hey, Rudy's a huge piece for us in the series. We think we have an advantage there. Mike out there generally accentuates Rudy a little bit more, so we got to be more creative and find other ways to have Mike be out there. But I just look at so many of these things, and maybe like a Finney Smith, sure, he could guard him, but like he's not going to guard a Rui. Like Rui would have no problem going in the post and be like, I'm going to get 2 points here. And the Lakers are smart enough to be like, ooh, Rui on Mike Conley, like Luka, LeBron, whatever, would be like, we're getting the ball there. I do think it's going to present a defensive challenge, and this is a series that I think the Wolves, I mean, you're going to have to keep the Lakers below 110. So you don't want to give up too many possessions where you just basically give away 2 points. So I do think there's going to be a little bit of how do you manipulate? When can you get Mike his minutes? When can you get Mike his minutes alongside Rudy? Where there isn't like we don't feel good about who Mike is guarding here.
Yeah, I found it interesting all season. Typically, a typical normal game in the first quarter or in the third quarter, Mike Conley's the first sub out. And if it's normal and there's a fine matchup, he plays for 6 or 7 minutes. What happens in situations like this, where they're like, ooh, there's not a matchup, they still try to start with it and get away from it like as quick as possible.
Yeah.
You'll see Mike, I mean, even yesterday, it was like 3 or 4 minutes to start the third quarter. You're like, and pulled out. And I don't know enough, obviously, from like a coaching standpoint or a playing standpoint of what that feels like. But to me, it always feels a little bit like, did he even have an opportunity? Was there even a chance of this working if it was so
predetermined?
Yeah. And I think largely over the course of the season, and particularly in the second half of the season, sticking with Mike and believing in making it work, even with weird substitution patterns and stuff like that, it's paid off. But that has always all season felt odd to me, of just giving Mike such short shifts that I feel like you don't let him get into a rhythm, which I think kind of takes away from what the theoretical advantage is of, Mike and Rudy being able to play pick and roll or having the offense under control at the beginning of the games, beginning of halves. I'm curious to see what Finch does. My assumption is, yes, that he continues to go with Mike and play Mike there and give it an opportunity. It would be a place where you would naturally understand change coming if he gets beat up there early. I'm curious what you think about Dante, though, if it was in there. What changes, whether it's in the starting lineup or it's just Dante's out there with the starting five? How many answers does that? What's the opportunity cost of that? Like, okay, now you have maybe better defense on Reeves. What are you losing? Like, how do the Wolves feel if it's the normal starting lineup, but DiVincenzo out there instead of Conley?
Yeah, I mean, I think with Mike out there, you can maybe get into some more actions and put the Lakers in tougher spots. Like I said, maybe it's just more stuff for Rudy at the rim, where you would probably like your chances of that. And generally speaking, when you can play with more movement and shift a defense, that's when it makes it easier to get offensive rebounds. That's when it's just like much easier for Rudy to have an impact in that way, where I do think in 2 ways with Dante out there offensively, just saying that he is a more sturdy, better defender against like a bigger scoring guard than a Mike is. But Dante, I don't know how much movement they have. I think they would end up in a lot of like, hey, it's got it. There's a lot of gap help here. The counter and the positive way is if there's a lot of gap help and Dante's one pass away, it might be like, that was not a very pretty possession, but it was just Ant dribbling the ball and then he kicked it to Dante, and we'll take an open Dante 3 any possession. So yeah, I think it could get a little bit more stagnant and maybe like less aesthetically pleasing in that way, but he is just another solution on the court. Not that Mike isn't as well in that kind of shooting, though. I think you would trust Dante a little bit more, even with the shooting that Mike has had. Dante, as we've seen, like he's comfortable taking it like 6 inches inside the out of bounds line. So he can space to the ultimate degree and really, really expose gap help in that way. But yeah, I mean, I just, that's not usually their best offense, but it definitely could work. And in the playoffs, it's not always going to be pretty offensively. It's like, but how do you squeeze out points? And that is another way to do it.
I mean, the best Dante offense comes when Naz Reid is also out there and they're playing spread, and it's Naz and Julius are the bigs. And, those are the explosive quarters that we've seen a million times. It was in that Bucks game in the third quarter when they went on that big run to, go from down 5 at halftime to I think up by 20 at the end of the third. It was 5 threes and like 6 possessions from Naz and Dante as they spread the floor against a team playing that wants to play drop with Brook Lopez, similarities for sure to the Lakers. And that's just been where the best stuff has come from. And I'm with you. Like, theoretically, the Dante spaced around heavy gap help with Ant is like, okay, there's a shooter. There's a cost to you from your man leaving Dante. I just don't feel like that has like showed up in practice in the games to have that same value when Dante's out there with Rudy. Not that he like can't play with it, but the Wolves just play extremely stylistically different when they have Naz Reid out there at the 5 versus when they have Rudy Gobert out there at the 5. And I don't know, maybe it's just because Dante has played more within that configuration. To my mind, that's where he's more potent, and you're kind of giving up on that whole second unit identity of Dante 5 out playing fast with Naz and Rudy if you do move him into the starting lineup, or if you do say like we got to get rid of these Mike minutes because of there's not a matchup. There's a cost there too in Dante's best offense. I don't think typically comes when he's playing with Rudy as the 5. He fits with Naz.
Yeah, I don't disagree. So if you wanted to keep that together, you could say, well, it would kind of be blowing everything up that you usually have done, which I don't know if the Wolves would be quick to do. But, you can make Nickeil the 3 minutes in sub, and then Dante and Naz come in after that. And Nickeil alleviates a lot of the same defensive concerns, it probably more so than Dante does. Not probably, absolutely more so.
Yeah.
Offensively, I mean, Nickeil can obviously shoot the ball as well. Again, not at the same clip as Dante, but like it's something you could do to be like, hey, we really love Dante and Naz. We love that start of the second quarter. We love the things they do whenever they're out there together. We want to keep that together. One option, but yeah, and you talk about those spurts with Rudy. I mean, with Julius and Naz out there with that group, it's like it sounds so good, but I just really do think for as long as Luka's out there in this series, you're really going to want Rudy on the court. I'm a pretty firm believer in that. If Luka looks out there and doesn't see Rudy and sees Julius Randle and Naz Reid and goes, oh, if I just get to my spots, there is not much down there. Like, I think that's when he would really start to like take hold of a game.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about the idea of if you made a starting lineup change, what if it's just Nickeil? And you just kind of flip Nickeil and Mike's roles.
Yeah, and maybe that lines it up more with like Mike is playing more with like Gabe Vincent.
Yeah,
it's possible.
Right, I whatever. I need to think about that.
And who knows? We don't even know how much Gabe Vincent's going to play. Playoff series. Like he'll play some, but if it's like, oh, he played 10 minutes.
Yeah, I do think this team has played the same rotation basically the entirety of the season.
That's why I'm very hesitant to say like game 1 or something that they will come out and just change what they do.
Well, I'm hesitant to say that they'll ever be able to, because they haven't. They have not. I mean, yes, Dante started for like a week before he got hurt at that one time. And that's the biggest rotational shift that they've had all season. Again, I don't know how this works, but over 82 games and you've been Naz Reid and Dante DiVincenzo, and you see the clock turn to 6 and you walk over there to check into the game, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, when the clock hits 3, you go in and you get Jade McDaniels. I mean, they have done that shit all year, the whole time. And I've never covered a team that's been so stringently, the same rotation for 82 games. But it makes me wonder if you could do something else, or if it would just be disorienting at all to make any significant rotational shift, just because you'd be like, wait a minute, this is when I come in, or this is who I'm playing with, right? Like, which is to say, which we already said, my assumption is they do start with the starting lineup that they've had, and they go. They've had, it's been a playoff rotation largely all season, and I would assume it'll be their playoff rotation.
I think for sure game 1 that's fair. Like, and I know it can be frustrating for people being like, this isn't our best way to win this game, but there's just this thing of like game 1, the idea of if you make a move, are you telling your team like, we got to change something because these guys will wax us otherwise? Like it's like, hey, try to see if you can make them adjust to you or whatever. Just seems to be the general approach. Like I remember that Memphis series in 2022, Steven Adams made no sense on the court, but Memphis went out there in game 1 and we're like, Steven Adams, our starting center, and Cat just had his way. And it was game 2, they started in 2, but then Adams picked up 2 fouls, and then Xavier Tillman had to play. And it's like Steven Adams was done for this series for all intents and purposes. And so I wouldn't be surprised, but I do think there's something to, hey, if game 1 and game 2 don't go well, you say like they can never make a change. I wouldn't be surprised at all if like game 3 in Minnesota, they're like, desperate times, desperate measures. We got to change something, especially if it's like, hey, we lost by 10 both of the first 2 games. We got to change something, because we see that in the playoffs all the time where teams are like, we're not just going to go down doing the same thing again and again, because we've seen that doesn't work. So I wouldn't be surprised if they eventually switch it up, but I don't think, and if they did so in game 1, I'd be pretty stunned.
Yeah, and I would question their ability to effectively shift to something. Game 3, it would feel desperate. I go, and then, so maybe to that end, it makes sense to be practicing it all week and it probably is important to what you pick to be your starting five, how you pick to guard Luka, LeBron, all these guys, to have that established in your 5 days off you have now. That I get that part of it. My assumption is they will stick with what they've done and then desperately change if that seems like it's necessary. LeBron James is in this series. Probably talk about him too. I'm definitely more focused myself on the Luka element of it because I think that's again where the puzzle starts. But the Julius Randle LeBron James matchup, or just like the opposing each other element of this, is going to be. I just don't think Julius Randle can significantly have a significantly worse series than LeBron James, and believe that the Wolves have any shot in this matchup. How do you feel about Julius in this? I think the assumption is he will be guarding LeBron, and maybe they'll be guarding each other. Can that be close in this series, Randle versus LeBron?
I mean, are you talking about just in terms of like production or?
Yeah. Just like this is not like deep X's and O's or anything like that. Just some of it is just, if we grade LeBron's series and he's an A-, and we grade Julius's and he's a C, what is the percent chance that the Wolves won that series? That's like,
I think it's probably lower. The thing with the Lakers is I think they've got a fair amount, probably as many good matchups for Julius, like for defending Julius as about anybody in the league. Like I look at Rui as like a very sturdy defender, like LeBron's a good defender. Finney Smith is like, yeah, that's about right for what I would pick for Julius. Like
big wings.
Guys, yeah, they're big wings, they can move their feet and they're sturdy. Like so, those are the types of guys where Julius Bully Ball I think is a very good form of offense in a lot of ways, but there'd be times where he picked the matchup, I'd be like, not him. Like when he would do it against Andrew Wiggins, I'd be like, this guy's stronger than you think, like not him. And the Lakers have so many guys where I go, not him. So that is what's going to be interesting for Julius. I think if his 3-point shot does not fall, I think this could be a tough series for him. So I wouldn't be surprised if you look and you go, yeah, LeBron James was a big advantage over Julius Randle in this series. And that does put Minnesota a little bit behind the 8 ball, honestly.
And that's why I think from a Finch and a coaching standpoint, it is important to be intentional about putting Julius in as many advantageous situations as possible. I have that Memphis game from earlier this week, like obviously really on my mind. And, the Grizzlies come out and they're guarding Julius Randle with Jaren Jackson Jr. And you go, all right, this is not a good, please don't go isolate 15 times in this game against Jaren Jackson Jr. if you're Julius Randle. And they did it. They immediately went into Rudy screening for Randle every possession, getting Zach Edey switched onto Julius Randle, and Julius is now in an advantageous situation to do his Julius Randle things. And I just think that serves as an example for this team. Like I said this earlier in the week, like, can Julius Randle go isolate on Jaren Jackson Jr. with 6 seconds left on the clock? Sure, he can. But don't do it if there's 16 seconds on the clock. And I just think some of that distinction, and specifically the coaching staff putting Randle in situations that are advantageous to him, clearly advantageous to him, is important, because he, as a prideful player, is going to think that every situation is advantageous. And there's just a distinction and a difference to be made. I'm pretty confident is going to be able to figure out whatever the coverage is and give you a good series. Julius needs to as well for them to win this. And so I'm focused on that in game one of like, did they find ways that felt like that Memphis game where it's like, 80% of the times Julius attacked, I was like, yep, good. You flip that, or if it's half the time, I don't know. I think it just starts, your offense starts rotting a little bit, and they don't, which has happened plenty of times during the regular season. They cannot afford that in this matchup.
Yeah, the thing with Ant is like teams have to sacrifice something to guard him. So there usually is like, here is door number 2 that we can easily go out of and kind of spring into some good offense. So like Ant knows, like, if I'm either going to have somebody that I think I can score against, and he probably can, or they're going to have to compromise themselves. And now here's this play. And it's all pretty straightforward. Even if it's a different look you haven't seen before, it's still going to be, well, the pass is right here, because they just can't guard you straight up. Where Julius, I just think the Lakers have some guys that can maybe really kind of contain them straight up, just on paper when I look at them. So at that point now it's like, it's bully ball, but they're not even like, they're not over helping or anything. So there's no obvious pass either. So if you are too intent on trying it multiple times and now you're just ending in tough shots with no kickouts, that really stagnates an offense and kind of drags things down pretty quickly. And those are things that we've seen not recently, but we definitely saw it at other points in the season. And when you say not recently, I mean, they haven't played very many good teams that have had matchups for them, and that plays into it. Julius has played great, but like who you play matters, matchups matter. And I do think the Lakers are just a tougher one. And we've seen him. I don't remember the Target Center games, but game 1 sticks out in my mind of that was a tough game for Julius Randle. It was a tough game for everybody, but that mattered a lot. And yeah, they've got to find ways to. You're going to need some production from Julius, but what is the production? Like, what forms does it come in, and how do you get to it in the most efficient possible way that's benefiting everybody? Like, that's a big problem for Chris Finch and company to solve, and just offensively in general. Like.
Right.
I know it frustrated Wolves fans to no end in the West Finals that they seemingly couldn't pick on Luka Doncic, and Boston then did it the next series to no end. And Finch said something yesterday after the game where I thought was interesting when we were like, the time off, what's the benefit? And Finch is like, usually you don't have much time to like game plan and correct things offensively. And during the season, you're like, hey, here's how we guard this team. He's like, and this gives us some time to offensively get into what do we want to do. Yeah. And I do think it's like, hey, how do you get to Randle? What do you do with him? What are you going to do with Ant? If you see this look, drill that stuff with Ant. And also, like, how do we get Luka into actions where we're pretty comfortable? Yeah. How do we get Jaden, like, inevitably probably going to be a lot of Jaden, like, how do we get Jaden to his best spots where we are very confident that he's getting these high percentage looks against Luka?
Yeah, no, I think that's sorry, I meant to actually bring that up when we were talking about Luka earlier. That's the difference, I think, in 12 months is Jaden's ability to be less of a spot to hide Luka to chill, than he was 12 months ago in that series. Jaden has shown greater ability to punish those things. I actually think you can almost see that he's like pissed off at the beginning of games. Like, you're gonna put like a little guard who can't guard anybody on me. Like, let's go, and I think you'll get an aggressive Jaden McDaniels against Luka Doncic if that's where they try to quote unquote hide him. Also, Jaden was pretty awesome at offense last year in the playoffs too. Like that
knocked down shots at a much higher clip.
Yeah. So there's a little. We always talk about Ant's ability to elevate, in the playoffs, and it's proven that's seemed like a trend starting for Jaden as well there. And yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit more later in the week, I'm sure. I did what to the LeBron part of the LeBron Randle matchup. Do you think Randle will guard him if both teams start their normal guys? If it's Hayes, Hachimura, James, Reeves, Doncic versus Gobert, Randle, McDaniels, Edwards, Conley.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I don't know what you think there, but I would think that they will go with Randle on LeBron versus like Ant.
I wrote down Ant. Yeah, I don't know, because if Hayes is out there, then Randle can guard Hachimura, Rudy can guard Hayes, and then Ant guards James, McDaniels guards Doncic, Conley guards Reeves. I guess my question is Julius better at guarding LeBron than Ant is?
I don't know. Frankly, like, you've got LeBron has been awesome off ball, and neither one of those two are like off ball defensive demons. So I don't just straight up, like, if LeBron's like, hey, I want to take this guy to the rack from the perimeter, maybe Ant, but I don't know. Julius does have a lot more size. I don't know. That's a tough one. I would have to see it. My initial instinct would say to do it with Julius, but yeah, I don't know. Ant does tend to crank it up to a different level defensively in the playoffs, and it's kind of assuming that sometimes. But
well, is he going to try harder defensively if he's guarding LeBron James or Rui Hachimura? That's just kind of how.
Yeah, Rui doesn't do too much. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, no, you're right. And the same is true for Randle. But Ant reaching his defensive peak, I think, helps you more than Randle reaching his. So I could totally understand that argument.
Last thing I wanted to talk about is how is this Wolves playoff team different than last season's Wolves playoff team? You have the obvious, DiVincenzo and Randle for Cat element of it, from just a roster standpoint of who's going to be playing in this series. But what elements of the way the Wolves play do you think are different when you think about this Wolves team versus the 23-24 team?
A couple things. I mean, I think they're better offensively in that I think they do have more options. I think they do have more answers for things, different ways they can play. Like the way that second unit plays is not really something that we've saw them achieve much in the past. And that just kind of is like a movement pace burst that can kind of carry over throughout the game. Ant's better. Ant is a better decision maker. I think that in its totality, he's just seen more. I do think there's been a progress there. Sometimes maybe not always as much as I would like or expect, but he definitely is better, and that matters in the playoffs. Randle, the bully ball thing is a different look than what Cat gives you, and Dante as the spacing thing is a similar look to what Cat gave you. So I think they have more options depending on what other teams want to do. Defensively, I still don't know. I don't know. I don't think I've seen it enough, like that highest gear, to truly trust it like I did last year. And if they pull it out, if it reappears and that's it, then I will think, oh, they could win this series. They could win a couple series. But I don't know if it exists like to the same extent, to the same consistency. I don't trust it to appear at this moment as much as I maybe did a year ago.
It is crazy that I think this is true. The Wolves, when they had Cat, were a significantly better defensive team.
Yep.
And now the Wolves that don't have Cat are a significantly better 3-point shooting team.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's, I don't know, it kind of works like the standings tiebreakers where, you're like, you move one around, you're like, whoa, it doesn't totally line up. Like, how was I 7th and now I'm 8th?
Right.
Whatever. It doesn't seem like that. And it doesn't seem like you look at the Wolves starting lineup with Gobert, Randle, and McDaniels and be like, shooters. But if you look at the Wolves 8-man rotation as a whole, and even if you put Jalen Clark in there, I think he's now a shooter. Like the depth of shooting and the volume of shooting of this team is a significantly different variable than it was last season in the playoffs. Cat was always a reticent 3-point shooter. Dante DiVincenzo is not. Naz Reid is not. Anthony Edwards now is definitely not.
That's a huge piece of it. And 3-point shooting, I should like that. That's a huge difference.
Well, that's what I wanted to,
and confidence in what he's looking for and comfort in it. Like it is literally like threat number one you have to take away from the Wolves offense. So it's something where in the past you might have been like, okay, just don't let him get into the paint. And now it's like option A has to be taking away that step in 3.
I'd rather if I'm the Lakers, I'm trying to take away the Ant 3 more than I'm trying to take away the down.
Make him finish at the rim over somebody.
Get exhausted. I mean, that's it changes things. I do think though, like no matter, I've seen a bunch of different coverages, and Ant has been a volume 3-point shooter in every game all season. True. And that is probably the biggest different singular thing with this team. And I'm curious what the value of that is in a playoff series, because I think I could make it a case that it's gigantic. But I also then kind of compare it against my memory of Ant in previous playoffs, where I feel like Ant in previous playoffs was more of a 3-point shooter. Like I feel like how he used to play in the playoffs is just how he played in the regular season now this year. So is it like, what even is the delta there of this, like, I don't know, Joker in up your sleeve or whatever? Like he's kind of been that guy in the playoffs. I meant to look up, some of his volume stuff, but to my playoffs versus this regular season. But if memory serves, he was gunning it from 3, in previous playoff seasons close to the degree that he was during this regular season. So I don't know if that's the change. I do firmly believe that globally, this team is significantly more 3-point shooting than it did last season's team with Cat, and Kyle Anderson, wasn't a shooter either. This team is gonna get him up, and it starts with Ant, but really fills out with the other guards and Nas coming off the bench as well.
Yeah, just to your point. I mean, I don't have like the averages like right in front of me, but the first series, his first playoff series ever against Memphis averaged nearly 10 3-point attempts a game. That was not the guy who he was
this
then,
season. That's what he averaged 10.2 attempts this season.
And
then
the
volume.
Yeah, and then the next season against Denver, he averaged just over 8 a game, and then it was over 7, like 7.5 against Phoenix, and then it went down a little bit against Denver, and then ultimately Dallas. So I think Dallas did a pretty good job, frankly, in general. That was just 6 3-point attempts a game, but they did a pretty good job limiting Ant of like, here's what we're going to do. We're going to press up. defensively, and then we're going to be in the gaps and kind of make somebody else beat us. That's what they did, and I think that's what the Lakers will do too. I think if he has success in this series, now granted, Dallas had the big piece of like shot blockers too, which is always been a massive part of the equation for defending it. Lakers don't have that, but I think everything else they will do will look pretty similar to what Dallas did.
The defensive part is going to be interesting too, and I don't know. That's going to just be I got to see it. Does this team turn up defensively? Because last year at this time, that group was like, we're an awesome defensive team. They thought that going into round one of the playoffs.
I mean, numbers wise, it was historically better than the next team.
I'm not saying they were wrong.
Right.
I just don't think that's how this group views themselves.
No.
I just don't think they're like, we rule at defense.
Right.
They're like, we got Rudy, we got Jaden, and then we mess up a lot. I think that's their private thought on what they believe in themselves as defensively. I think they do still have the defensive personnel to be just as good. I mean, again, you're switching out Cat and Kyle Anderson from your rotation to Randle and DiVincenzo. It matters positions, and Cat's size was really important, but I don't know. It doesn't seem like a huge trade-off one way or the other, just from if we're giving them those 4 players 2 and 2 grades as defenders. But I think it's got to be about belief and understanding defensively, which I would assume starts in practice this week and is really hammered home of you guys playing against Luka. This is going to be a pretty tough one if we're just going to try and score with this team here for 7 games. And in a series when we're on the road in LA, for 4 of the 7 games. So yes, the threes was the thing I wanted to get to, but I think when you bring up the defense, that's different. That's different than the season ago. And I think it can't be different if they want to win the series.
Probably not, but I do go back to that Western Conference Finals, and multiple times in that series, Chris Finch was like, sometimes you got to be able to score alongside teams, and I think we'll get a good gauge game 1 of okay, I think the Wolves will probably deliver whatever is their best defensive effort. Now, will it be schematically the best? I don't know. Maybe they'll make adjustments throughout the series, but into the ball, really intentional. Hey, it's game 1 of the playoffs. It's ABC. It's Saturday night. Here it is. I think you'll get the Wolves' best defensive punch, and if they see okay, they didn't gash us, but the Lakers still got a lot of what they wanted. Then it quickly, I think, does become into got to score on this team. Got to take advantage of the fact that they don't have an elite defensive perimeter player, that they don't have a rim protector. Got to find ways to. This is part of the reason why you make a trade like that and get a little bit more offensive personnel and win that way. Be a little bit more. A team that can have a more versatile approach to basketball in general. I think that's all possible. I think against a Denver, it would have been you really got to be there's no reason why you can't dominate this game defensively. The Lakers, I think it'd probably be hard over 7 games to be we just dominated them defensively.
Sure.
They just have too many smart, good players, good ball handlers, good creators to do that with. I think it's got to be a little bit of a mix of both. It's made it harder on the Lakers than they're used to, and still were able to take advantage of being pretty good. Be that team that was top 10 offensively and defensively this season. Be that team if you're going to make a big push in this series.
Which they've been. They have been. It's just going to, they just got to be able to execute it for 7 games in a row, and with frustration, with officiating. This series is going to be in the limelight. You're playing the Lakers. You are in the prime slot on ABC on Saturday, and if you're Ant, to what degree are you fighting the urge to show out versus win, and being able to distinguish the two. We're gonna have a lot of time to dig into this over the course of the rest of the week, and I want to watch some more and think some more about all this stuff. So I'm not going to make a pick right now, but no. I don't think I'll have you back on. You got any gut feeling?
I mean, I think I would pick the Lakers, and they are slight. It's pretty close. I think it's the Wolves, depending where you look, they're about plus 150 to win the series.
It's out. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's on DraftKings plus 155, and it was plus 144. So right in that range. And that feels about right. I think 4.5, 5 point underdogs in game 1. I think this will be a competitive series. It's gonna be, this would be almost against anybody. When you have LeBron James and Luka Doncic, and they've played serviceable defense. So many playoff games are close, and at the end of a close game, those two guys
Yep.
It's hard for me to watch those two guys and watch Minnesota and the way they kind of failed to execute in like the
clutch
crunch time against good teams this year and think that Minnesota's going to pull it out. Like Minnesota's recipe has often been like outplay the team for the first 46 minutes. And can you do that consistently in this series? Yes, they definitely have paths to winning the game. Like Rudy could come out and it looks like, probably not to the same extent, but Utah and Brooklyn, where every defensive rebound Utah or Brooklyn got was like, that was a miracle. But it's gotta be some degree of that. I think for Minnesota to have a really good chance in the series, and it could be that way. But I just think if I think it's going to be close, then I'm probably going to go the Lakers route.
Yeah, and they got home court. I mean, that's a factor in this. Maybe if it was inverted, at least those odds would have shifted a little bit. Yep. At least some. Yeah, me too. I'm going to take some more time to think about it and look it over and come to some sort of opinion on it. It'll be fun to talk about throughout the course of the week. You guys can read all of Jace's coverage on the Wolves, not just in this series, but this whole playoffs over at twincities.com and the Pioneer Press. Appreciate you doing it, man. We'll do one maybe in LA next week.
Yeah, sounds good, man.
All right. Until I'm kind of figuring out my schedule, I think hopefully we'll do Britt or somebody tomorrow. We'll try to be doing daily episodes here until game 1 starts. But until then, he's Jace. I'm Dane.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.